Many men are often doing searches and reaching out and messaging around confidence and purpose and looking at mastery in these spaces and really understanding the confidence space. It's interesting. I'll sit with a lot of guys one on one and I'll ask, "Hey, what do you really want?" And oftentimes there's this struggle, like, they're kind of sitting with it, and they kind of start with things they don't want, which is like, hey, I don't want this or I don't want that. And it's really interesting. I start to hear this vague, like, hey, I'm looking to like more confidence, more authenticness, more purpose. Like they just want to feel alive again, right? Like that's really, and they want like the people in their lives, like they just want lights out stuff. And in reality, their lives have like either they're super successful and they've worn, I call this mask of success. It's a social, like success is awesome. Don't get me wrong, growing, improving, and enhancing. But if you have success and it's masking or covering up some of this inner, like not feeling fulfilled, then it's a place to look at. So I love talking to guys about this. And one of the most socially acceptable things is success, right? Like you have this achievement and you have this push. However, it looks good on the outside and it actually feeds that dopamine piece of your brain that makes you feel like you're moving forward. And busy falls into that category. Like if things aren't working or if there's challenges in life or your life, things seem a little flat, like the busy piece comes in. Like, hey, I'm super busy because it creates this feeling like you're growing and moving and there's some accomplishment in the dopamine feed. And it's really interesting. So I encourage you to just sit with that comment for a bit and learn and just sit in stillness. I often use that, like guys are often not still enough to see what lands. So I wanted to share that. So like let's get back on topic. Like so where does confidence come from, right? Most men chase a confident feeling. They chase it as feelings, and feelings don't hold under pressure. Real confidence is a certainty. It's not needing the room's approval to stay yourself. This is the crux, right? Like a lot of guys are often disconnected or have lost parts of themselves because they've given it to the environment for approval and look to it for that. And so, why performance based confidence? I'm going to use this performance based confidence always runs out is you have to keep re earning it. And this is where like perfection and over performance shows up. Like I agree with performance. I agree with mastery. I love people becoming like the best versions of themselves. And I think that that's super important for men. However, when you start to look at overperformance, I actually created 10 signs and I'll put it in the show notes below of 10 signs that you're overperforming. And I wrote a post recently that overperformance is a signal, right? It's this constantly needing to prove and re-earn things. So it's really an interesting place to look at and to notice. So you can't fake confidence into existence. There's been movies and there's things like, hey, just puff your chest and do that. But it may be short-lived. It may give you a sense. I do agree in state change and state management. However, it's only to get the process moving to actually build in your mind a sense of belief in the confidence. It's building a body of knowledge of experiences, not necessarily reading knowledge, I talk about that a lot, like a educational variety, which takes a longer time, more of an embodiment practice. So often a way to start with confidence is the body knows before the mind. And that's why you see in the men's space or in life, like people are like, start to get strong, start to work on your diet, start to build your body. That's kind of like the higher shell part of it, but it starts the process. I often tell guys like, what's your morning routine? Where's your strength? Are you feeling strong? Are you working out using weights? Often things of that nature. So I wanted to share that in the confidence space. So I recently wrote something around where two ways man loses his ground or confidence. I want to say share that, okay? So the first way is what I call collapse or folding, right? It's not this big dramatic, I'm just putting this term to it. And what it looks like is he's agreeable, he absorbs, he goes quiet, he says whatever ends an argument or a conflict or something of that nature. It looks like he's being a nice guy. I've talked about Dr. Robert Glover's work called No More Mr. Nice Guy. It's not what you think. The title's like, it's not you're being a jerk. It's just being you, authentically you. So that's an important piece to start to notice. So from the outside, he looks like a good guy, and the part that nobody sees is that it starts to erode internally. So you actually start to erode your word to yourself. And we'll talk about that in a bit. Is when you start to like go back on your word, you're eroding your integrity and your confidence, the word of yourself, like the congruence of what you believe versus what you're doing. And it takes courage. And I often talk to guys that courage is we often think of courage of doing something hard on the outside, um, doing some hard things, testing your body. I think that there's a value to that to show what you're able to do. However, also, it's doing some hard things in conversations. It's being able to have difficult conversations that may lead to, oh my God, somebody's going to push back, right? So I do think doing outwardly hard things, doing things that your nervous system's not used to, but I often tell guys the most courageous thing that you could ever do is start to go inward and start to connect inward and doing those things in addition to doing them outward. Sometimes the outward is the playground. I use the playground or the landscape that we get to test and utilize this stuff because book knowledge doesn't often make transformation. It's an educational variety. I say this all the time to guys. I could give you a book on how to swim, but until you actually get out there and swim, you are not learning and doing it and integrating it. So that's a big piece. So getting back to this folding person. So we come across as kind, a good guy, and all this, but secretly inside you're not keeping the word to yourself. It costs your relationships. Like you don't think so, but it actually costs your relationships. Like I see so many guys that are like their spouses have either like been unfaithful or they're kind of hit with a divorce or the relationships are so flat that they're basically leading separate lives. They haven't kissed each other or been intimate in a long time, and that's a huge indicator of things. So this here, like it affects that. It affects your kids. You think your kids, like oftentimes people are like, hey, I'm staying together for the kids. We're doing this for the kids. And the reality is like the kids are brilliant. Like it's never what you say, it's what you're doing in your demonstration. And oftentimes it affects your kids, it affects your young boys, if you're a guy, and your daughters. You know, the biggest indicator for failed relationships with girls, so your daughters, is girls with daddy issues. We talk about it all the time, girls with daddy issues. So anyway, so the effect of this folding affects more importantly your primary relationship with your spouse, your partner, your girlfriend, or whatever. And when you start to when you start to give in, like women, I wrote a whole theory on restorative masculine integration theory, and I love women. Their energy is amazing, but there's this polarity. They actually push to test trust. And so when you fold, you erode trust. And I'm going to use Richard Cooper. I like a lot of the things he has to say. And he says contempt in a relationship is the beginning of the end of a relationship. And I agree with him. When your spouse is starting to make these digs at you and these contempts, they've lost respect, and it's very difficult to bring that back. And this is the work that I love to do, because your relationship, I often share this with guys, is a lot of guys come to me for like business, career, and certain types of growth, but they think that that's a silo, but the relationship actually shows areas that you need to step up in other areas of your life. It's really a cool thing to observe. So anyway, I'm going down this rabbit hole, but I want to bring it back to the folding. It subconsciously brings this resentment to self, to others. It leaks out as you're starting to make digs on somebody. You're getting short with people on things that aren't that important. And where guys have often learned this is in a home where people where their inner selves have gotten rejected, or when a father was like didn't want to be bothered, wasn't engaged or in that matter. And there's no shame. A man often may try to armor up in that space. So the other one is folding. So the second way is what I call rigidity, or this hardness, right? So the man gets tired of folding. Somewhere later, he decides he's done and he goes in this opposite direction. So he gets kind of hard. He stops explaining himself. He stops bending. He's cold. He's more immovable. He's unreachable. He calls it strength. He thinks he's stepping into it, but he's actually not. He's creating another barrier. It looks like a man with a frame, which I will talk about later here in this video. And it's really armor with just different branding, right? So what this costs, he wins an argument, but he loses access. So he loses connection with others. He's lost access to his partner, his spouse, his wife. That's not what she's looking for, because it's this hard version. And there's this blend and grounded confidence that needs to come up. Nobody tells him the truth anymore. It's just this very superficial, it's lonely inside of there. So it's often an interesting place to be. So what do these two types of guys have in common? These two types of men, one gives himself, so the folding guy, or the collapse I'll call, often gives himself up so other people feel comfortable, and the other shuts everybody out so to keep himself comfortable, and it's actually doesn't work out, and both are reacting, and neither one is in choice or being in choosing. And so mastery isn't about getting harder, it's about being able to choose, starting to notice, and starting to create some movement forward, which I think is a beautiful place to do. So I often talk about this in restorative masculine integration theory. It's a published theory that I put together based on some of the concepts of working my own inner journey, some thought leaders that I was connected with, and also working with guys in groups, working with women and men one-on-one, which is a super amazing thing for those. And if you're interested, I have an aligned man and also an aligned female coaching engagement, which is amazing. So when you think of it, I call these stages. There's the hidden man, and that's silent, isolated, performing. The armor is everything. He doesn't know who he is without it. And the suppression isn't strength, it's pressure with no release valve. And it always finds its way out in some way. The stage two, and a lot of guys are here, and that's okay. I call it the divided man. It's different versions in every room. He's confident without performance, and he's unshakable in public. He disappears in private. He's living in pieces, and there's this inner stuff going on. And and I'm gonna put it in wherever that you see this in the show notes. I wrote this. I call it the Mass of Men Wear, and it's for people that have had some sort of engagement with me. They start to understand these masks. And I call them masks, and they're educational tools. So use them as tools, not for shame, not for like to feel bad about yourself, but just to notice an awareness, because then it could start giving you the space to make some growth. And then the stage three is what I call the grounded man. He's present, he's whole, he's confident without that over performance, and he's powerful without this armor, right? So most listeners that'll listen in are often at the stage two, the divided. He hides by agreeing, and he goes cold. And I see it a lot in the men's group, that the men's groups that I run. And it's important to have a powerful men's group where people can speak truth, without overly giving advice, but where men can actually call you out on the stuff that you need to be called out, and also walk along with you as you start to heal and grow in those spaces. So I wanted to talk about this piece that I wanted to land the plane on in this program, and it's what is called the frame. Okay. I love the concept, and I'm not sure where it originated from, but I want to give some guys in the men's space a little bit. And I heard it from Richard Cooper. And the frame is an amazing piece of you stepping into you, right? And this is an awesome thing. It's knowing what you are for, what you stand for. It's you could stay in contact with someone's emotion without absorbing or shutting it out. And it's non-abandonment. You don't leave your inner self, your peace. You leave them, and often you go to a place of inner strength, if that makes sense. The real test is, can you be contradicted, or somebody come with you at you with something, and you still stand in yourself? What is my frame? And this is a piece that's interesting. So if I had to put this, it often shows itself up in our personal relationships, often with the ladies in our life, is, have you lost your frame where you're into her frame? Where, like, I'm gonna use this as an example, where you go, like, here's the nice guy, like, oh, let me do what you want, let me go into your world, let me make you happy, right? You lose yourself, your frame. And honestly, the key to a successful relationship in the female space is bringing her into your frame and having and establishing your frame. The question I get like a lot with guys is, hey, I've either lost my frame. What is my frame? The how on this frame. So, and I love that. So I talk about it in my Aligned Man work with guys. But if you're interested in learning more, reach out to me at toddangelucci.com. And we could get on a call and talk about this, because often guys are like, how do I establish this? What do I need to do? And I'll talk about a few things here. So nobody taught you this. This is the interesting thing that I've learned in my own journey, is especially if you hadn't had a strong male role models growing up and a strong male community, is we're often playing in a playbook that nobody knows. I always say, hey, there's this magical guide playbook that we think we need to go. That's where we see, I don't use the word toxic masculinity, because I don't think it, like, I think There's toxic femininity, toxic masculinity. It's basically ungrounded men and women that have dysregulated and are just behaving badly, right? It's not the gender, it's the person, right? But we label it as that. And men have inherently, because they've lost or never developed or have lost contact with their frame. So everybody has one, has the capacity to build one and to grow into it and lead into it. It's just all of the stuff in that has come at us has caused us to forget and lose it and disconnect and basically disconnect from ourselves from that place. So it's not a character problem, it's a training gap. And I love to work with guys on that. So when pressure comes, you reach for the only two moves that anybody ever showed you, right? And it may be, let me be a nice guy, or fold or collapse, or you go into the other extreme because you're trying to navigate these boundaries that you don't know in yourself. And many men have been handed intensity and told it was transformation, and that's not the key. There's a blend of this, right? So I wanted to like expand on this frame just for a minute. So your frame, again, in this definition means staying composed under pressure. It's an emotional state plus the context that you set inside an interaction. Okay. And holding it means staying composed under pressure, not getting pulled by someone else's emotional weather, their emotions, and all of that. And it's not bending your values for approval, right? The frame, and it's trainable, right? Um, it's self-command at its root, and your circle as a force multiplier. It's your confidence over compliance, and all of it kind of melds together. So the question really underneath the compose is where it's coming from. A man can stay composed by hiding, nothing in, nothing out. The calm is real, but it's a calm of a locked door, right? So that's kind of some of the things. Uh, or he could be composed for he knows what he's for and isn't afraid of you finding that out. That is the essence of it. So you could stay composed by just being quiet, by nothing in, by just calming the nervous system. But there's this what he's for and what he isn't afraid of you finding out. Armor holds by concealment, frame holds by definition. I love this. Identical from across the room, but not the same person. So this is a real nuance. So the frame gets measured, like this other divergence of it, gets measured by the response it earns. Status, difference, whether she stays. Like women love this. They love it. They want an adventure to go on. They want to step into their frame, your frame. They often don't know. And because society has conditioned them in a way, it actually is attractive. Why do you think, I don't want to use the extreme of the bad boy, but why do you think strong males, successful males attract women? It's because of the frame. And it's super cool, and women love it. And like, I'm going to use this term, right? A lot of the guys, especially the nice guys, when you're in the folding component of this, when you're kind of giving in, and what you start to notice in a relationship that is challenged is the death by a thousand little concessions, right? Where they're starting to nitpick you about what you're doing, about where you're going, not necessarily where you're going, like, hey, put the White Sox here. Yes, dear. Yes, dear. You give everything to her, and she actually starts to internalize, and you start to lose that respect. It's contempt by a thousand little paper cuts, right? And as this contempt moves through, it's hard to gain that level of respect back. And it's often an indicator that that relationship may not survive. And it's a tough thing. And I think any guy that has gone through a divorce or some sort of challenge where there might have been some infidelity or the relationship, then when they look at it and kind of do a post-mortem or an after action review or whatever you want to call it, they lost themselves along the way. And and it's not this fight for who's in control. It's the frame. And it becomes a mirror for your kids. And I like to call it a level of self-leadership. And this actually transcends into your career, into your business, and it grows all of this, which is super awesome. So, all right. So when a man loses his frame, he loses touch with the people around him every time. The career, you could see, I just mentioned, you people, when you're in your frame, you gain authority through presence and also you empower others because you emanate. It's not a pressure. It's not a push. It's not a prove. It's not, hey, I'm a micromanage or on any of that. Your family, not only do you want your family and your kids to learn your values, they learn from your regulation, your posture, your that inner self that gives them a mirror to absorb. It's never like I say this all the time about kids, right? And I think I mentioned it here, is like it's never what you say, it's how you show up and what you're doing, which is super powerful, right? So, you what you tolerate in yourself, what you tolerate here in yourself becomes your kid's ceiling. Just take that in for a second. For those that are like, hey, my kids and what I leave and what am put on them is I want to teach them from this grounded man place, this frame, so that they could do it. Because don't forget, if you have daughters, right, a big indicator for a successful guy, a red flag for a guy is a girl that has daddy issues, right? And when they don't have a frame, the daughter, they it gets played out in their personal relationships. And for men, this if you have boys, you start to teach them this level of leadership that actually helps them grow and develop so that they could help build lives and have amazing connections with the ladies in their life and their kids in the future. So I think that's a beautiful place. I wanted to say loses his frame in brotherhood, right? When you lose your frame in brotherhood is you're in a group and you're pretending you're better than that, you're better than you actually are. You're hiding, you're not being genuine and authentic. I think the power of groups is and it has to my thought too is the group needs to have some grounded men and if there is happen to be somebody who runs the group in the leadership space, you have to have the ability to go inward because what you avoid in yourself, you won't approach or feel comfortable when somebody else brings that up. So having a great frame, being able to sit with your emotions and not let them control you and take them over, but just notice and be there with them and allow them, and that helps the brothers grow. If you're interested in a powerful brotherhood group, reach out to me and we could talk further about it. But if you are in a group and you come with frame and there's guys with frame, you become sharpable, like iron sharpens iron. If you're in this avoiding and if you're not doing those things, I've had some guys that are not willing to look at some of the things in their life. They're growing in a certain area, but they can only get this far because they're not looking at some of the places that may be hard for them to look at. So if you have no frame, you can't survive a hard word, and pure armor can't receive it. So I just want to go there. So I want to talk a little bit before I wrap this session up. I think this is a beautiful thing is how to actually build it, finding it, right? I call it the three sentences. What am I for? What won't I trade? And what am I building? And if you can't say all three in 30 seconds without qualifying, you don't have a frame yet. You have a mood. So the non-negotiable inventory, 5 things you said yes to in the last 90 days that you meant no to. And what did each cost? What were you afraid would happen? That fear is the size of the gap. All right. And the room test, right? Here's the room test. 4 rooms: your work, your home, church or organization or wherever you go, and alone at night at 10 o'clock or 11, whatever you're up to. Describe the man in each in 3 words in those places, and circle what doesn't repeat. That's your fragmentation. I love this. So, holding it, feel it. Like this is parts where we start to go into it and start to notice in your body, and that's the place where you start to grow at first. And you can't read your way into this. There's an experiential component. There's some mirroring with with a guy, and they're starting to talk about this stuff out loud. This is why it's a room and it's not a book, right? Often I call, here's a mask. So I encourage you to, the mask that men wear is the information, the knower, right? They know everything. They've read the books. They could recite them. They know what to say in the good spaces and they look like it, but they haven't integrated it. They haven't embodied it. They haven't sat with themselves. So if this resonated with you, first of all, reach out. I'd love to have a conversation. I'm going to put a couple things, the 10 things about overperformance. It's a free. Also, there's the mask that men wear, which is an amazing guide. And if you're interested in learning to do some of the deeper work, the Aligned Man is just an amazing one-on-one session. And just reach out. And thank you. And I hope to see you again, and tune in to the next episode.